Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Charles Sterling, Microsoft USA, who will be talking to you today about an introduction to and what is new and exciting for Power Virtual Agents. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC20. Don't forget to check out the Resource Center. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com and click the content link at the top. During this webinar, we will have questions and answers. Type any questions you have in the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered during the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Charles Sterling. Hello, Charles.
Good morning, Shane. Hello again.
I'm good. Take it away.
Let me share my screen, and once you can see it, if you could let me know, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can see it, and I'll be here with any questions or comments. I'll pass them over to you, Charles.
Outstanding. Okay, guys, my name is Charles Sterling. I'm actually a program manager on the Power Apps team, but I've actually been working with Flow and Power BI for quite a while, and I wasn't even on the Power BI team. I've been working at Microsoft now for, 27 years. I'm dating myself. My background is from the development side of the house, where I worked on Visual Studio. So even though I have that background, I actually really do embrace the whole Power Platform, low code, more power sort of mentality, because before I actually was on the Visual Studio team, I was a support engineer. I realized that getting up to speed on tools actually can be really, really important, probably one of the most important things. And I want to share with you that if you've looked at my Power BI, what's new and exciting, this is going to be a little bit different. I've looked at the telemetry, and not a lot of people are using Power Virtual Agents yet. So I'm going to go out and do a grounding on what those are first, maybe spend 15, 20 minutes on that aspect of it. Then I'm going to go into what are the new features that we've shipped in the last 2 or 3 months, and we'll actually take a look at those. So half demo, half presentation, I think is actually where we're at. More demo than presentation. Okay, and then I've asked Shane to go out and interrupt me if you have any questions. So hopefully he will actually remember to do that, and we'll go ahead and get started. So Power Virtual Agents, if you haven't looked at it, you really, really should. It probably does the best job of embracing that low code, more power mentality of the Power Platform. And the ethos or the vision for the team is actually to really enable your domain experts, regardless of whether or not they have domain knowledge in software development, right? So that's actually the whole Power Platform idea, but that is really the vision statement that Omar, who runs the team, has actually set forward for the team. Hopefully you've actually seen this slide on everybody's presentation, where they go out and show that Power Virtual Agents is the newest addition to the Power Platform family. And like I mentioned before, it really does do the, again, maybe I'm a little bit biased because actually I'm probably going to be joining that team, but it does the best job of embracing, making it with absolutely no skills and actually not requiring any code to come up to speed and actually deliver productive solutions. Okay, so getting into why did we create it? Why did we actually need this? There's already a platform or tools for a business user to go out and create solutions. Starting with Flow to go out and automate the process, Power BI to go out and look at data visualization. Why did we need this way of creating chatbots? Well, it turns out to go out and tether yourself from one UI experience and having a UI designer go out and say, you're going to have to click this button to get this answer is actually fairly constraining. So what we wanted to do is actually create a solution for people to go out and self-service their own needs. This is actually pretty important. I actually mentioned the fact that I was actually at one point working for Microsoft support. And it turns out about over 60% of all customers would rather go out and answer their own question versus actually picking up the phone and actually asking somebody. So not having to staff it, going out and meeting their needs and actually addressing their concerns or what their support needs is actually pretty important. You're actually really servicing your own customers themselves. So that's actually the biggest number for me. You can actually see that these references, I'm gonna make these slides available to Shane and he can upload those. But that's the one that speaks to me, is that if we could actually service that, then we'll have done the required job, or we've actually gone out and added a primary pillar to that Power Platform. Okay, so what did we have to do? Why did we actually not just use the Azure Bot Framework? It actually does a great job. Well, it turns out making a great chatbot can be pretty hard. First of all, there is actually pro developer skills required to actually create that. And then also going out and understanding how a chatbot is constructed can be difficult. The impedance mismatch between those people who actually create, solutions using chatbots and the domain expertise can be quite large. Meaning, I'm a fisherman, and I wouldn't expect a lot of my fishing buddies to be able to go out and start up using the Azure Bot Framework and do a fishing bot where I go out and say, what kind of fish are you looking for? I say, I'm looking for a tarpon, and what kind of tackle do you want to use? But with Power Virtual Agents, I positively would expect any of them to be able to go out and get up to speed. And we'll actually look at a couple of examples that I've been playing with the last week or so. To be able to connect those experiences with backend systems is actually part of the Power Platform promise. We actually have over 300 connections from our data integration, and Power Virtual Agents can connect to any of those. Now, we actually do that through Power Automate because the integration is so easy there, but we'll take a look at that as well. So again, making chatbots easier is actually why we actually went out and developed Power Virtual Agents. All right. Having it built on top of the Azure Bot Framework, right? I already mentioned the fact that we needed something more than that, but it actually is indeed built on top of it. We get all of the advantages of the Azure Bot Framework. If you've looked at the Azure Bot Framework, they actually have these ideas of compositable or modular chatbots called skills. By virtue of us being built on top of it, we can actually go ahead and integrate with any of the skills that you've already built inside of your Azure Bot Framework. Additionally, anywhere that there's an integration point for the Azure Bot Framework, for like Teams experience, we actually get that practically for free. So it makes it very, very easy for us to go ahead and bootstrap all of their functionality. As a matter of fact, I talked about the 300 different connectors. Here is a picture of those on the right, and this is a little bit out of date because we actually are always adding more of these. In addition to being built on top of the Azure Bot Framework architecture, we are actually a first-class citizen of the Power Platform. What does that mean? Is that we are now solution aware. So we actually require your Power Automate flows to be in solutions, and the bots themselves are actually going to be in a solution, so that way you can package them up and give them to people. And we're going to get to those slides in a little bit of what's coming and what's new. And finally, we actually have our very own experience. So let's go ahead, and I think we're going to take a look at it. So we're actually at the demo time. So I'm 8 minutes in, and we're done with slides, or almost on slides, until we get back to the what's coming. So let's go ahead and open up my browser and go ahead and start with the website itself where you'd want to do this. If you haven't created a bot, you're going to want to go ahead and type in aka.ms/try PVA. PVA, of course, stands for Power Virtual Agent. So try PVA. And that takes you to this website right here. Clicking sign in and then going out and clicking start free will go out and give you this experience. So I've actually cheated a little bit, making it so I don't have to type in anything. And the only thing that this requires to work is that you have to have a environment for, let's actually see if I can have Power Apps open. So here's an environment, and it requires you to have an environment already created. If not, we'll actually go ahead and take you to where you can create one. And that actually requires a common data service database, because we actually put our metadata in there. We'll take a look at what metadata is in there in a second. But the only thing that's required here is a name. So a name is actually all that's required. And I click create. At that point, I'm actually left with this one. Now, I actually have been creating the Rana bot. I just did that last night. And the reason I created it last night rather than actually do it from scratch, that way we can get a little bit of analytics when we actually go out and take a look at it. At this point, we're ready to start playing. Let's go ahead and click on something like the customized greeting, and you'll see that I've actually I've already modified my custom greeting for my Rana bot. Well, this is coming up. Oh, here it is. Here it says, "Hi, I am your Rana bot," and we could go out and make it say something like, "Hello, SharePoint Europe." So we could go ahead and save that. Now, this is in the design experience, if you will. But if I want to make that available, I would go ahead and now publish that. So let's go ahead and hit publish itself. So where would I find this, or how could I use this Rana bot? And we'll actually get to making it more active and do things in a second. I want to actually show you some places of where I've put bots. So this Rana bot is actually used in this example. And here I've got a Power BI report. Let's go ahead and put it into full screen mode. Yes, I would like to save changes. I don't know what I've changed, but there we go. And since this is a Power Platform week, let's actually show you an example of using all of the siblings, if you will, from the Power Platform. So I could go ahead and click on let's actually start with the Power Apps integration again. So this is a Power BI report. And if I go ahead and click on add a patient, this should show me a Power Apps. So I can go ahead and say that I am going to take a look at the initials, or I'm going to add a new patient is what I'm doing. And the patient is going to be located in Vancouver. And the MRN number, actually, I didn't know what an MRN number was. I was helping one of our local hospitals and they said, hey, this is our table. And I looked that up last night. So that was the first thing I added to my bot was, what the heck is an MRN number? Turns out it's this 7-digit number. I'm not actually doing any validation of this, so don't worry. Hope I don't have COVID. And let's go ahead and give it a date. We'll make it, yesterday? And of care, let's say that Chuck's taking care of this person. Patient is Bob. And the room is, again, not doing any checking. And let's make sure that this person doesn't have it. And again, this is actually all fictitious. Now, this is pretty important. There's a couple things you can't do in Power BI. You can't collect data. And it's fairly difficult to do real-time updates from within the report. But when you hit this save button, it's actually going to go ahead and update it. So let's go ahead and see. I've got 6 of these negatives. No, actually, we want to do positive in this case because I think I'm counting the positives. So let's go ahead and hit positive. And I've got 47 entries all up. So if I hit enter, what I should see is that moved to 48. It looks like I was actually looking at the negatives, so I got the wrong data. And I don't know if you looked at this, but it actually did add a new row. Now let's go ahead and go back to the report. And let's take a look at my Rana, the chat bot that I created last night and I haven't done anything with. So now you'll see that my chat bot is available and I can go ahead and greet it. Hello, Rana. And you'll see that that change that I made a second ago is now available, where we went out and said, hello, SharePoint Europe. And I can go out and ask, what is a MRN number? And it is this thing that we talked about. So again, that's all my chatbot really knows. Let's go ahead and make my chatbot a little bit more intelligent, and maybe we can go out and take a look at some other more advanced cases at this point. So let's go ahead and hit escape, and let's go ahead and go back into my Rana bot. Here we are, we're in the Rana bot. And how did I make it answer what is an MRN number? Well, you do that through topics. And the topics themselves has this one that's called what is an MRN number. Let's go ahead and create a brand new one. Let's go out and do what would be, hopefully we'll actually have testing facilities. So testing facilities. And I would go out and give it some testing or some phrases that would trigger off this experience. So testing. Where can I find out if I have it? Have COVID. Coronavirus. There's a certain theme here. It's just because I happen to be helping the hospital. Coronavirus testing, etc. And you would go out and give a bunch of keywords. Now, we do not need to have direct keyword matching. We're going to go out and use artificial intelligence to go out and say, I think this person's looking for this. And even though you don't use these words, and actually even slang works in some cases. Now, at this point, once we get into this testing, what are we going to want to do? Let's go ahead and open up the testing or the Canvas environment. And we probably want to go out and ask a question or give it a statement. So sure. Oh, actually, let's go ahead and ask a question right off the bat. Sure, I can help with that because my coronavirus is always helpful with that. What city? We'll make it easy. Are you looking for testing from? Okay, so this one's gonna be more complicated. The other one went out and just get out and said an MRN number is blah, and that was actually right here. In this case, I'm going out and saying, hey, in order to do testing, I need to know what city you're from. And let's go ahead and give it a multiple choice. And what we'll do for this is go out and say Seattle. Actually, I think we've broken it down into suburbs for that example. And a new option might be Redmond. And I don't know if you can see this. When I hit enter, let's actually look at this. Watch when I hit enter right here. It's actually adding another one of these cases. So let's go out and do one more option. There you go. So now, scroll down a little bit. You can see where it's equal to Redmond or equal to Ballard. And I can go ahead and let's do one more. I think Vancouver was one of the ones that I actually had on my data set. And I can go ahead and save that. And at this point, when I go out and say a new option, I go ahead and say I can make it equal to that. So now I have this situation where it's going to go out and prompt me to what city I've got and then give me the results of each one of those. So let's go ahead and say show a message. Say in Redmond, you can get tested at 1 Main Street. And we're not going to do all of them. I'll just do 2 and show a message. In Ballard, you can get tested at XXXX. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. Oh, it doesn't. Is that my error? Where is my error? Topic checker. Let's see what's happening here. I think I actually may have responses empty. Oh, okay. So it's going on and saying, hey, you can't just leave that empty. So let's go ahead and say that. Okay, let's see if that fixes it. Save. There we go. So it is now saving. My topic checker is now set, and I can go out and in the test environment or the design experience, go out and say hello, and I should get my new response that we just gave a second ago. And where can I get tested? And let's see if it is smart enough to actually go out and take these words and match it to my survey, and it did. So that wasn't one of my trigger words, but you get the example. And it goes out and says, hey, here are your three choices. And let's just go ahead and, what was it? I set it up to Redmond. And I could have typed in Redmond as well. In Redmond, you can get typed in or tested at 1 Main Street. That is actually topics in about 7 minutes. Now, in the cases where you actually might want to have all the cities in the world, you probably wouldn't want to type them all out. What you would do is actually maybe potentially use something called entities. And you actually, there is already one called city here. What we could do is go ahead and actually bring in all the cities so that way they could go out and say, I live in New York and I would like to get tested. And it automatically goes out and populates the city of New York, and it'll actually go out and say, sure, I see that you're using New York. So rather than actually having a fixed set of options, you actually are using something called an entity. So that's actually the next really important part of a Power Virtual Agents. Now, I mentioned the fact I created this last night, and the reason I did that is analytics is really an important part of Power Virtual Agents. In order to see what people are asking questions about, whether or not they're being successful, or what paths they're going through are going to inform you to be able to actually improve your bot. You know, right now, my bot is quite young, but using analytics, I can go out and make it quite sophisticated over time to where it answers all these questions that I've gotten, because I can go out and see what everybody's asking and what pathways they're going through. Publish, I've already shown you. We've actually gone out and quite easily take the design experience and make it available. So in this case, I actually haven't published it. Let's go ahead and publish that. And now it's going to be available. Looks like it still is complaining about my testing facilities. I think it's actually still doesn't. I think I still have one that doesn't have a choice on it, so we can get rid of that, but that's okay. Channels. Now, when we first released, we actually only had, I think it was 4 channels, and we're releasing channels on a regular basis. So this is where can you put your Power Virtual Agent. In that example that I showed you a couple minutes ago, I've actually got it based inside of a Power BI report. Not something that is actually even in our list. So you go ahead and take a look at it. You'll actually see Power BI isn't there. In this example, let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. You can see that we actually are writing an application to help our customers with their #1 request around Power Apps, which is where can I find the training or make my own training available to my customers and my employees. And I've actually done a training bot. And in this case, the training bot is available inside of a Canvas app. Again, not one of the things here. So in addition to these channels that we make it very, very easy to, it's quite easy to extend. I think the demo website, I think, is one of my favorites. So let's go ahead and take a look at the demo website and copy this, open this up into a new tab, and this actually will show you how easy it is to actually go out and put your Rana bot in your own website. I think I actually have Barheads. Yeah, so there's the Barhead webpage where they've actually, and I've actually copied the name from them. They didn't copy the name from me. Let's be very, very clear. And theirs is actually quite sophisticated. Theirs actually will go out and answer all the questions about the Australia condition for COVID-19 situation, travel restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. So here is actually the Barhead website using a Power Virtual Agents bot. So, and here is that website. So we can actually go out and greet it, hello, and we actually get the response that we've got. And this is actually some of the prompts that you can use. And we're going to get back to those when I get into what's coming next. Where am I at? I was actually walking through some of the other UI that we were talking about. So this is actually the channels themselves. Authentication. So you would actually probably in many cases want your bot to be able to know whether or not you're talking to somebody that should actually have access to confidential or restricted information, or are they coming in as anonymous as a guest? And we can actually go out and check to see their identity and actually go out and do things based on them being authenticated or not. Skills, I think I mentioned that earlier. If you do have assets already written in the Azure Bot Framework, you can actually make those available through your Power Virtual Agent itself. So this is where you would actually add your Azure Bot Framework skills into Power Virtual Agents. So this is actually kind of a whirlwind tour of Power Virtual Agents from start to finish. Now, what I promised in this presentation is what's coming. So let's go ahead and go back to the slideshow. And
Charles, I have one quick question for you here.
Yeah, and who's asking?
Okay, so it's coming from Philip, and Philip wants to know, can I use Microsoft Q&A Maker with virtual agents?
Yeah, so going out and doing Q&A Maker is it is actually on the roadmap. And matter of fact, I'm going to do a webinar next week on Wednesday where we're actually going to, I think it's Pavan, who's going to go out and show you what that's going to look like. So great question. Yes. Okay, so we released Power Virtual Agents on November 4th. And between November 4th, which is actually when we had it in preview, to December 1st, I think it was actually when it was made generally available, we actually did some updates then. So what were those updates? I already talked about having more channels. We actually have added, I don't know, it's like 12 new channels, whatever the number was. What we've also updated since then was the ability to go out and do make it much easier for you to call Power Automate. Let's go ahead and go back into that sample, and I'll show you if I go out and take a look at topics and take a look at my MRN number and go to the authoring canvas. And what I can do here is I want to call an action. And what we added back in between the November and the December release is this, this option to create a flow. And that automatically gives you a flow. See if I have a flow. Here is one that has a trigger already built for you before you had to use an HTTP request, and it does a return. So it automatically sets it up for you. In this case, actually, I'm initializing a variable to pull back records out of a database. So in this case, where you'd go out and list, the training, the testing facilities, maybe there are hundreds, and you actually want to pull them out of a database. You would actually probably want to put them hard-coded in there. So that's actually one of the new additions that we added in there, making the bot name and icon changeable. Now, while all of Power Virtual Agents that I showed you up today is actually the low code, this actually does assume that you're going to be doing actually some HTML scripting. So it's, I don't know, it's medium code, I guess, at this point. So it is expecting some sort of coding skills, and we're actually going to make that a first-class citizen, make that easier as well. Telemetry, I've actually already showed you the telemetry on how to see what your customers are doing and how they're interacting with the bots. You can go ahead and take a look at the updates that we've done. I think the last one that we've done was being able to look at how many charge for runs was actually being handled by your bot. So I think that was the last one. Michael Wilcock actually has a blog post on that telemetry enhancement. So that was actually added back in the, I don't know, the end of the last year. So what did we have? What have we just recently updated? Well, I didn't know that was building. Okay, I should have looked at the build before that. So we'll start with the oldest, and we'll move up to the newest. So this is actually the just one that we did. Skills integration was actually added after the end of the year. So the ability to integrate with the Azure Bot Framework wasn't part of the initial offering, it was something we just added. Suggested topics is a godsend. So having those topics come in, for when I showed you the topics itself, I had to type it in. Now imagine where I actually just fed it to a website. It went through and actually pulled it in all of the FAQ website or all of your documentation website as suggested topics. So that's actually quite nice, where I point it to a website and it pulls in topics that it recommends that you write a bot for. And that was actually released just after the beginning of the year. Topic redirection. This is actually, I think, the #1 request, or one of the top requests from our Diaz site, was I want to be able to start chaining my topics together. So let's say that I went from, and what is a testing facility, to would you like to know what is required for testing? And you can actually go ahead and chain those two topics together. Custom canvas and start a conversation. This is definitely one of the top requested ideas as well. What you could do is, rather than having someone type in hello or whatever the case is, based on the context, like in the Barhead example, they are actually coming up in that one web page. And if you know that you're coming up in a web page versus a Power BI report versus a Canvas app, you actually might actually have it automatically prompt. I see that you're asking for a question about, and have that actually literally come in as a default question answer. And that actually, again, is like the changing the bot name and the icon. That does require right now a little bit of HTML code. So when you actually go out and host that bot, you're actually going to go ahead and have to change that. I think I have an example of that. And in my case, I actually am using Visual Studio, but here is where I'm actually calling a bot ID that goes out and gives me the text hello. So in this case, I'm using the default one, but I could go out and say what is a MRN number, or whatever the case was. And that way it will actually come in by default with this question, or this particular question, and it'll come back with the response for that. So again, a little bit of code, and this one is a little bit more sophisticated because I'm actually putting a Power BI report in that same web page, but it's certainly not untenable. And we are going to make that a first-class citizen in that it's going to become a no-code solution. And then the custom no intent behavior is a no-code solution, which is what happens if I can't identify it? If I go back into my bot and I go out and type in oops or ops, it probably won't be able to identify it. And that's what it says. It says, I can't figure this out. So rather than actually connecting with a person, let you decide what you're going to do in the fault condition. So this is actually what you can go out and set. And that is actually a set here underneath of your general settings. And this is actually something that we just released. I think it was actually released last week. So I can go ahead and system fallback is actually what it's called. And I can decide I want to go to a particular topic, and I can go to fallback topic. And this is actually going to go out and give me my my fallback topic. Rather than saying I can connect with a person, I could go out and do this, like say, hey, you want to go to this website, or please visit the CDC website, or whatever the case is. So you can actually go out and have the default not be connected with a person, but another topic that you've actually mapped it to. Okay, where am I at?
Can I jump in more questions? So Raju wants to know, has Power Virtual Agents already released, and is it available for production use?
Yeah, it has released. As a matter of fact, that very first website, let's see if we can go out and go back to that website that I actually went to, and it's aka.ms/try-PVA. It's kind of hard to read with that dark background. I'm actually going to put that in the chat window, Shane, and if you could actually answer that back to, I think you said that was Reza that asked that, and down at the bottom, it goes out and talks about the pricing and how you can buy it, and it has released back in December. I want to say it was December 1st or 2nd is actually when it released. Great question, Reza, if I remember the name correctly.
Okay. And we have another question here from Tommy. He was wondering, will it be possible to use old information when redirecting between topics?
Oh yes, actually, yes. So when I mentioned the fact that you have intents, let's actually go back to the entities themselves right here. So if I started out with going out and saying, hi, my name is Chuck. I'm a male. My age is 52. I live in Redmond. I would love a black car, and my email address is Chaz. All of these get populated as variables. So let's actually see if I can find an example of a flow that uses, or sorry, a Power Virtual Agent that uses that. Yeah, here's an example. Okay, so this is actually that one that was that training bot, and you can see that this is quite sophisticated, or quite a bit more sophisticated, I should, but it's just calling flows. So let's see if I can make it a little bit, drill in a little bit. What happened? Here we go, and scroll down. Okay, so this is going out and asking what kind of it isn't asking what kind of training type. It is assuming that it either you've already told it, or if it hasn't found out, it is then going to prompt you for the training type. So in this case, it's virtual versus online versus video. And at this point, it also is going to out and take a look at, can I email you? Let's go a little bit further because I want to know about products. So here it's asking, it demands, it wants to know, are you, what product are you using? So let's go ahead and go back in here. And even though I give you the prompt, the list could actually be a superset of that. That's just text. I could actually remove all of this text right here, and it'll still work because it's actually using the variable called product. And that's actually one that I added. If I go back into entities here, and say, sure, I do want to save that. I probably did want to save it, but whatever. And find product, it will let me use that historical information that you were just asking about here. So here's a custom one, that product, and here are the ones that I've added. And if I went out and said, hey, I'm using the product Power Apps, and I'd like to find video training, it's going to remember that the type that I was looking for is video and the type that was product. And it won't even ask me those questions. It actually drop all the way through my workflow for that topic all the way to the bottom. So Tommy, great question.
And Michael wants to know, is this like an external version of Q&A bot, or what are the differences?
Yeah, so this is actually built on top of the Azure Bot Framework, and having that different experience, it is different. It is actually part of the Power Platform, meaning it is going to be integrated back into my solution, so I can go ahead and put my Power App, Canvas app, my model-based app, my flows, package them up and give those to you. Q&A Builder is actually not part of that, I guess, that platform for building end-to-end solutions for your business users.
Okay, and Raju is back. He just has a comment. He goes, from your earlier screen shown, it appears to be cross-platform supported. Are there any limitations for the integration?
I think you're actually asking about the connections. So the connections they are platform ambivalent, and there are extensible that we actually have custom ones that we supply, those 300. But if you can get to it from a REST endpoint or some sort of open internet interface, I can actually go out and write my own interface to it. We talked about fishing earlier. Let's say that I actually had a fish count camera on some dam or something. I could go out and do my own custom connector to it, regardless of whether or not the operating system. All I need to know is some web interface that I could actually get a hold of. And again, that uses Swagger or REST endpoints if you're familiar with those.
Okay, and Tommy's just come back with a follow-up question. He goes, if you swap to a new topic after a question, can the variable be used in the new topic or only during the old?
So we showed in topics, we actually have two different metaphors. One was, let's go back and go out and take a look at it. So in my topics, actually that one that I brought up that was quite complicated, that would be a better one. And I'm gonna go ahead and say, I'm looking for this one, okay. And now in this example, I'm using entities. Those are reusable. I showed entities earlier, but if I'd gone through and I used let's just go ahead and ask a question here. Let's see if I can get a question. It's right in here. There we go. And let's say that I ask a question. Come on. Ask a question. There we go. Ask a question. There's two ways of doing this. I can either do a multiple choice, or I can go ahead and use any of those entities. If I use an entity, right, so there's that product entity. If I use an entity, I can reuse that. If I went out and said, like dog type, and I actually only did types of dogs, Dalmatian, Airedales, whatever the case is, the dog type I wouldn't be able to use. It'd only be something that's available here versus an entity. So entities are pretty powerful. I can use them all over the place. They get pre-populated. And if they're not pre-populated, they will prompt it. The reason actually I was doing it here wasn't even for any of those reasons. If we went out and went back and took a look at those options that we did in the Rana bot about Redmond versus the Redmond versus, here it is somewhere, testing. You get these buttons. Those become pretty unwieldy if I were to try and draw lots and lots and lots of dozens of these. It's a lot easier for them to go out and say, what city are you looking for, and give them some examples of cities that they might choose but don't constrain them to that list. So these buttons, if you had lots and lots of those, in addition to only be available to this topic, if you have it as a set of options, entities lets you get around those, I don't want to say limitations, it's a design pattern. So yes, you can actually use the variables from one topic to the next if you're using entities and not options. Great question. I think that was that Reza that was asking that one again?
I think it was Tommy that asked that one last. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
That's it for the moment.
Okay, so I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, which is good. So custom no intent behavior, I showed you where you set that, and basically that is in the case where it just can't identify what's going on, go out and default it back into a particular topic, not like an escalation path. All right, so what's coming next? What are the next big things for us? Next week on Thursday, which is the 29th, if everything goes well, there's going to be a brand new community just for Power Virtual Agents. Let me actually show you that. I happen to have a build of it right here. It's not in that browser because that doesn't have my identity. Let's see if we can actually find the right one. Here we go. And we're going to bring that window over. So if you're familiar with like the Power Apps community, right? And that's actually part of the Power Users platform. So they all have their own forums. You actually see that there is a Power Virtual Agents community that's coming. And this is the look and the feel of that. So that's actually coming next week, going from most recent to a little bit further out. And we're going to have forums on just topic creation. There are going to be videos and webinars themselves. And even though it's not released, I've got some of my MVPs who are actually already been in here. And I've got Daniel Christian, who's actually already posted too. We've got Renato, who seems to be answering most of the questions in our forums right now. He's already posted a video, and I'm actually going to go get some of my videos up there as well. So right off the bat, you're going to have videos available on how to actually create Power Virtual Agent bots. And that's actually the next thing that's coming, and that is next week. So you actually got to see you guys, SharePoint Europe is the first people who get to see it. Multi-language. So right now, everything I showed you is in English only in the production version. We actually already have Spanish in preview environments with some of our customers, and we plan on actually having that come out in the next couple of months. So the other thing I showed you in that new community, and it's not going to be available when we first launch the community, but if I go to galleries, you'll actually see that one of the galleries that we're going to have, and this one's going to be hidden initially, is a bot sharing gallery. Now, clearly, in order to have bot sharing, we need to have a way of going out and doing export. So I don't even see it on my list here, but one of the features that's going to be coming out in the next month and a half, 2 months, is to be able to export your bot. Oh yeah, here it is, export your bot. And once you export it, you can then upload that into that gallery. So that's going to be great news. So that bot that I showed you on training, I would actually upload that, and that is my plan. Barhead's Rana bot, I'm hoping that Lisa Crosby, who's actually the MVP who wrote that, would actually be uploading that into that gallery for everybody else to take a look at. And again, that is Australia specific information, but at least it shows you how the folks in Barhead are actually creating their bots. Multi-authoring. Right now, when I create a bot, it is only tethered to my identity. I can't actually go out and do share yet. And that is actually coming in about the same time as the export. So those are two different scenarios. They're related, but I can go out and add new authors so I can actually author them together. Further out, we're going out and taking a look at global variables. So right now I think it was Tommy ask a couple of times, can I use variables from one topic to the other? And the answer is yes. If I use entities, I can actually go out and do that. What happens in the case where I want to go out and set from, let's go out and take a look at that example, maybe from my power station. Let's go back to the power station. I want to set, maybe they've got to go out and click add content or announcing the crisis gallery or some of these other options where I actually want to set those entity variables up front. I want to make those available to my bot without actually having to have them retype it in. That is actually what I'm talking about with global variables, and it gives you a very, very powerful way of interacting from your Power BI report, your website, your Teams channel, or in this case, my Canvas-based app for Power Apps. Deeper CDS integration. What I'm hoping that the team is actually, I know they're working on it, but what I'm hoping we're going to release soon is the ability to go out and take a look at some of those topics actually at the CDS level. So that way I can actually use some of the database tools to go out and create those. So again, I use the suggest topics where I actually go out and scrape a website. That's very cool. That's available. What I'd like to do is actually be able to point it to a database. And that's something that the team's working on. And is actually, again, no dates for this stuff, a little bit further out. Rich responses. So we actually had talked about, actually, I don't think anybody asked about cards, but having cards as being a response, or an image or a video be a response. Like I said, hey, sure, you can actually see the testing status in Redmond at one Microsoft or one Main White Street or whatever it was. Perhaps we go out and say, have an image of the map. And you actually have a map there, or a video of how do you get to it. So you can actually have the step-by-step driving directions. So that is actually what's coming in just the next couple of months. Even this stuff isn't that far out. Even further out than that, a good friend of mine, Mariana, is actually on the team. She's working on telephony support, to where you can actually start going out and calling these bots in from a telephony pipeline. So that's actually a little ways further out. If you want to know more about what's coming, if you go to ak.ms/business apps release notes, you can actually see what the team's working on the next 6 months out. The reason I pulled these out, these are going to be what's available in the next couple of months, with the exception of the bottom one. It's a little bit further out than that. So Shane, actually, I think I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, and I'll see if there's any other questions. If not, I'm going to hand it back to you and maybe give these fine folks 14 minutes of their day back.
Sure. There is a few questions in different ways it's been asked, but there is people asking about licensing requirements, licensing levels, etc.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and go back into that website, because that same website that I actually put in there, and hopefully Shane actually put here it is. So right now the licensing is pretty easy, and what we've gotten the feedback is that maybe more granular options. So what it says is that you're actually paying per session, and it works out to be like 50 cents per session of these interactions. So if I wanted to have 2,000 sessions, I spend $1,000, and that's kind of the only option. So you buy 2,000 of these sessions, and you need to spend $1,000. And Michael Volkov, who actually went out and did the enhanced telemetry for looking at your cost-based runs, is actually looking at maybe making a factored versions of that. Again, I'm not making any releases, but they are looking at actually having other options, and he's looking at that telemetry. And again, I don't want to steal his thunder or any new releases. The other thing too is I should have mentioned, but we actually have a big conference where we tend to release a lot of information, maybe like changes of this nature, and it's called Microsoft Business Application Summit. It is another free webinar series, Microsoft Business Applications Summit, and we'll actually be online. Looks like I spelled Microsoft wrong. Whoops. We'll be online and answering questions while we make these announcements. So there's Alyssa, we've got James on here that's going to be doing it. And again, it's free. And actually, I think there's going to be 30 sessions in this area on the Power Platform. So definitely something I would recommend. Now, hopefully right now that answered the questions about the licensing, because right now there isn't a lot more granularity. So let's get back to that website, ak.ms/trypva. And the way you purchase those is you need to go in, messed up, ms/trypva. Okay, there we go. And the way you buy it is you actually use the Office portal. So you go in, you look at services, and Power Virtual Agents is one of the services. Just like if you're going to buy a Power BI premium capacity, it's in that same list.
Okay. Tommy is back with another question. He goes, does entities save the user response? So if I ask the user for an email in the hello topic, if I have a send email topic, can I then use the email and can I then use the email the user typed in during the help topic?
Absolutely. And Tommy, it goes beyond even that. So even if they weren't prompted, let's go out and they typed in, hello, my name is Chuck. My email address is chass@microsoft.com. That gets stored right off the bat, and you can use it through all of the rest of your topics. And to the point where if you've got topics that would have asked for email, it will actually automatically populate it and not even ask that part of your topic flow itself. So if you had a flow that says, if email address is applied, do this. If not email, or if your email address is at Microsoft.com, then go this way, or at Boeing.com, and you already have it, it won't ask for the email address again. So yes, if you can prompt for it in the initial greeting, that gets stored as part of your entity. And that's actually, email is a default entity. If you go out and take a look at entities, you'll see that email is one of them. And if they go out and either unprompted supply that or prompted supply that, you get to use that anywhere else throughout all the rest of your topics in your interaction. And to the point where you could even go ahead and start passing in these parameters of email, consonant, duration, event, etc., to your Power Automate flows. So you could have a flow that says, send them a piece of email. So that's actually a really common one that I do all the time. Matter of fact, I was just in Australia myself, and we went out and showed where we would send a water restriction PDF form. So a form for actually going out and getting an exception for water restriction by county. And that was a PDF that was sent through email from a bot, and we used Power Automate. And we didn't ask them for their email. What we did was we assumed we had it, and if we didn't, they were then prompted after the fact. So great question by Tommy.
Okay, Hazem wants to know, is there plans to make Power Virtual Agents part of the Office 365 Enterprise E3 licensing?
You know, I don't know about the licenses changes that Michael is working on and the rest of the team. I have given feedback. I work for a guy named Charles Lamana, a great guy, and I've gone out and I told him, I said, for some of these samples, I've got a bot here, I've got a Power Apps here, I've got Power BI here. Seems like making it simpler using E3, using E5, or I actually kind of prefer the Azure way. So if you actually aren't familiar with the Azure consumption model, and let me just show you how Azure does theirs. Would be a lot easier. And we're actually evaluating whether an Office paradigm makes more sense. And again, the objective here is to try and make it easier for you guys to use these technologies. But you can see right off the bat, I don't know if you saw it, that wasn't even prompted. It went out and said, I have $142 remaining. So I could actually go out and buy a certain amount of credit. And you know, databases cost some credit, my application insights. Azure Bot Framework is built on this sort of paradigm. So whether or not we go to an E3, E5, or an Azure Bot, I'm hoping that we do make it some way of making it easier for you to actually start collecting licenses. Again, that's still further out. Right now for Power Virtual Agents, we've got the one option, which is for $1,000, you get 2,000 runs. And I know that Michael is actually looking at making that, you know, a little bit more granular, so we can actually have different options. So yes, it's feedback that we've gotten. Matter of fact, Renato, the person that did that video, that's his number one feedback to us, is that in places like Brazil where he's at, you know, that initial buying could be quite steep. Now, after he sees the value, it makes a lot of sense, and you can go out and see, oh, you know, before we would get these phone calls, and the phone calls would cost our business $3.75 each. 50 cents each that deflect a phone call actually is a huge boon for the company. We can actually see a lot of cost savings.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Raja wants to know, is Virtual Power Agents, does it take care of compliance requirements such as GDPR, etc. by default, or does it demand Office Compliance Center configuration?
So GDPR is actually not just us taking care of what data is, it's actually a series of processes. So yes, we can be GDPR compliant, and yes, by default, we are GDPR compliant, meaning that that telemetry I showed you doesn't collect PII, it doesn't store it for more than 90 days. That said, you could easily go out and break into jail by piping. Remember I talked about having a flow that sends them an email of a PDF. We talked about that. If you went out and started storing that data into a database, then you'd actually be getting into a situation where you're using Power Virtual Agents to do non-GDPR things. But by default, we are going to be GDPR compliant. And all of the interactions that you're seeing are also used in the audit log, which actually have all of the GDPR toggles based on them as well. And that's actually true of all the entire Power Platform.
Okay, Rebecca wants to know, what is a run?
A run is actually where I go in and start with hello, and I go all the way into, and there's actually, in the topics themselves, they have a completed. So if I go out and take a look at a completion, let's say this one was a pretty simple one. I could have actually gone out and ended this with an MRN number. And if I went out and said, hey, end conversation, end it with survey, them going in and typing in hello, asking this and ending the conversation and stopping that interaction of the bot would be a run. And again, this is why we've changed the analytics to where you can actually go out and see those runs themselves, called sessions, as part of the analytics themselves. That way you can actually go out and see what sessions did we actually see, or the runs themselves, that you can actually take a look at. So when you take a look at the sessions, that's the interaction. You can actually take a look at the runs in that session information. Rebecca, great question.
The last question, because I know we're starting to run out of time, Charles. Last question is from Ayad. He wants to know, if I purchase one PVA and pay $1,000 per month per tenant, can I use multiple bots on different channels?
I think so, but I don't know. I'd have to get back to you. Let me actually get Michael, who's our licensing person, to get that. And actually, if you could, I usually don't go out and promote my own Twitter, but let me actually promise that as a Twitter response. So I actually don't know your email address, but if you go out and go to twitter.com/Chaz, that's me, and I actually will get you the answer by the end of the day. Is that can I go out and buy a Power Virtual Agents license and use it across all my bots, or is a license tethered to a bot? And I apologize, I don't know. I've actually been using the trials all the way through. So I need to find that out myself, because I actually have a couple bots that I probably need to go out and get licensed as part of these samples I'm doing. So I had great question. I promise you, the end of the day, I'm actually going to put that in the chat window for Shane to echo back out to you folks, or he could do that. And by end of day, I will get Michael to actually tell me the answer. And actually, I'll probably just I'll just at him in my Twitter, and that way he can actually go out and have the conversation directly. So great question. And Shane and the rest of SharePoint Europe, I want to thank you very much for actually letting me participate in your guys' webinar. And hopefully we actually can do more. Maybe where I'd have to wake up at 6 a.m. the next time, maybe I can wake up at 8 a.m. next time. But sure. You know, Shane, I'm going to hand the microphone back to you for close.
Great. Thank you very much, Charles. And Charles, just one final word there on behalf of the entire ESPC community here. Thank you so much for taking the time today to complete this webinar. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Charles. So, okay, I'll just get back here to myself. Share my screen. Okay, everybody, that is the end of today's webinar. Please see sharepointeurope.com for further details on all upcoming webinars, or visit our resource center where you'll be able to find all previous episodes. A big thank you again to Charles Sterling for his stunning webinar today. In the chat window, there is his Twitter handle should you wish to reach out with further questions. Thank you all for joining today. Take care and goodbye.